What does the education system in St. Louis have to do with the atomic bomb? If you want to skip to the conclusion is that radioactive waste from the Manhattan Project has done enough damage to people that the federal program, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, provides funds to people who can document that they were harmed by the radiation from the Manhattan Project. St. Louis in particular, specifically North St. Louis, was one of the places where that radiation was the worst. So if you live in one of these zip codes in St. Louis and you either have one of the cancers listed in the program or you lost a loved one to the cancers listed in the program, there's financial compensation in the form of $50,000, $25,000, or medical expenses, details in the program. Walter Johnson's book, The Broken Heart of America, is full of plenty of things that we could talk about, and some of them which we have talked about on this channel. One of the most egregious places where children were exposed to radiation was a particular creek called Coldwater Creek. It was a creek where nuclear waste from the Manhattan Project was dumped, and children played in it not knowing that there was uranium-238 and thorium-232 running through the water. I've been teaching for 7 years, and last year I started teaching in one of these districts, and I will never forget the conversation I had when I was talking with one of my students about this book I was reading where I was learning about Coldwater Creek and its effects on the population, and she said, "Oh yeah, that runs through my backyard." I am a teacher in part because education is one of the only reliable places where social mobility is at least theoretically possible, and if not social mobility, at least intellectual liberation, the kind of which you can read about in bell hooks. To zoom out again, what does this have to do with Prop S, the election in St. Louis tomorrow, April 7th? Proposition S is a bill to fund the Ferguson-Florissant School District. I work in the district. I've been printing 3D fidgets for my students all weekend, so obviously I can't be objective about whether or not you should vote yes on this bill. For purposes of this video, there's two reasons why I think you should vote yes. First is because I have a lot of trust in our new superintendent, Dr. Howard Fields. I read one of his books and seen a lot of his moves that he's been making in public, and I don't feel comfortable talking about what I know from what he's doing behind the scenes, but from what I see behind the scenes, he is doing a good job, and he has my full support and respect in being the guy to pull us out of the financial crisis that we are in. The second reason is RECA. RECA is a federal program, but in order to access the funds, you have to prove that you lived in one of those districts. Ferguson-Florissant School District is one of the places that has those records. Educational records are one of the only places where you can prove residency that far back in time. And I don't know if you know, but there's a teacher shortage, and in an underfunded education system with a teacher shortage, there's not necessarily like a ton of office staff laying around to like process all these requests. So if Prop S passes, hopefully tomorrow, there will be funding earmarked for hiring a person to help make sure these federal funds get distributed to the people in the community that need them. The vast majority of my audience does not live in St. Louis, but if you happen to live in St. Louis or talk to someone who lives in St. Louis, encourage them to vote yes on Proposition S in Ferg-Flor tomorrow, April the 7th. I'm Charlie. This is That Makes Sense to Me. Have a good one.